The sound of rain drummed against the thin walls of her modest apartment, a fitting soundtrack to another exhausting day. Emily Harper, a 42-year-old single mother of two, slumped onto her worn-out couch. Her hands were still damp from washing dishes at the diner where she worked double shifts, and her mind raced with thoughts of overdue bills and the rent check looming like a storm cloud. Life had been this way for years, an endless cycle of work, sacrifice, and worry. As she reached for her purse to count the crumpled dollars left from her tips, a glimmer of color caught her eye. A lottery ticket she'd bought on a whim last week. It was still tucked in the pocket where she'd forgotten it, a fleeting indulgence she'd dismissed as wishful thinking. Emily sighed, pulling it out and turning on the small TV in the corner, the lottery numbers flashing across the screen. Might as well check, she muttered to herself, not expecting anything more than disappointment. But as the numbers appeared, one by one, her heart began to pound. No, she whispered, her eyes widening. She checked again, and again. The numbers matched. All of them. The realization hit like a tidal wave. She had just won the jackpot. A staggering $35 million. Emily froze, the ticket trembling in her hand. This was the kind of money that could change everything. She could pay off every bill, send her kids to college, and maybe even have a life that didn't revolve around constant struggle. But as the shock wore off, doubt crept in. What would this money do to the people in her life? Her teenage son, Jake, had always been kind-hearted but struggled with entitlement, expecting more than she could give. Her younger daughter, Lily, was sweet but naive. And then there was her sister, Beth, whose friendship often felt more like a competition. Could she trust any of them to treat her the same if they knew she was a millionaire? That night, Emily stared at the ticket, the weight of her decision pressing down on her. She could cash it in, announce her win, and finally escape the grind that had defined her life. But what if the people she loved changed? What if they only saw her as a source of money? By morning, Emily had made her decision. She wouldn't tell anyone, at least not yet. Instead, she would test her family and friends. She needed to know who truly cared about her and who cared only about what she could give them. With a deep breath, she tucked the ticket into a hidden compartment in her dresser and set her plan into motion. It was a dangerous gamble, but Emily knew one thing for sure. She wouldn't let this money destroy her family. The following week, Emily's life outwardly remained the same, but inside, she felt like a storm was brewing. The lottery ticket, now carefully hidden in an old jewelry box in her dresser, was both her greatest secret and her heaviest burden. Every time she looked at her kids or answered a call from her sister, Beth, she wondered how they would react if they knew. Cashing in the ticket was easier than she'd expected. Dressed in her simplest outfit, a worn hoodie and jeans, Emily visited the lottery office on a quiet weekday morning, hoping to avoid attention. The staff congratulated her warmly, though they raised an eyebrow at her insistence on anonymity. "You don't want the big photo op?" one of them asked, holding a giant check. "No thanks," she replied with a polite smile, clutching the paperwork tightly. When the money finally hit her account, Emily stared at the screen in disbelief. The zeros seemed to stretch endlessly, an amount she had never imagined seeing next to her name. But the number didn't bring instant happiness. If anything, it made her feel even more cautious. She knew how quickly relationships could shift when money became involved. Emily decided to create a test. She fabricated a story that would force the people in her life to reveal their true intentions. The idea struck her as she sat in the break room at the diner, overhearing a coworker complain about a financial dispute with a relative. "People show their real faces when money's involved," the coworker had said. Emily realized she could use her sudden fortune to see who truly cared about her and who only cared about what she could offer. That evening, she gathered Jake and Lily in the cramped living room. "Kids," she began, her tone serious, "I have something to tell you. Things are gonna get tight for a while. The diner cut my hours, and we might have to make some sacrifices." Jake groaned, muttering about his canceled basketball tournament, while Lily immediately offered to skip her art class to save money. Emily nodded, her heart aching but determined. The next step was harder, calling her sister. "Beth," I hate to ask, Emily began hesitantly, but I'm in a tough spot. Could you lend me a little until I get back on my feet? She braced herself for the reaction. Beth's laugh was sharp, almost mocking. I barely have enough for myself. You're the one who's always acting like you've got it all together. Figure it out. The line went dead before Emily could reply. That night, Emily sat alone at the kitchen table, processing the reactions of the people closest to her. Some, like Lily, had shown compassion, while others, like Beth, revealed an unexpected coldness. The test was working, but it left Emily with more questions than answers. For the first time since her win, she felt the full weight of what she'd set in motion. The money had the power to change everything, but at what cost? The days that followed tested Emily's resolve as much as her family's loyalty. While the secret of her newfound wealth burned in her mind, her life outwardly continued as though nothing had changed. She still woke before dawn to pack lunches, still worked long hours at the diner, and still wrestled with the exhaustion of balancing her children's needs with the relentless grind of survival. Her teenage son, Jake, was becoming increasingly difficult. The moment she had told him about their financial crisis, he had withdrawn, retreating to his room or out with friends. When she pressed him about skipping basketball practices to save gas money, his anger boiled over. "Why don't you just try harder, Mom?" he snapped, slamming the door behind him. The sting of his words lingered long after he was gone. Lily, her 10-year-old daughter, was her one source of comfort. "It's okay, Mom," she said one evening, her small hands resting on Emily's shoulders as she tried to comfort her. "We don't need a lot of stuff to be happy. We have each other, right?" Emily forced a smile, hugging Lily tightly. If only the rest of the world saw things so simply. At work, Emily's co-workers started noticing the strain she carried, mistaking her inner turmoil for financial stress. Her best friend at the diner, Monica, pulled her aside one evening. "Emily, you've been off lately. If you need a little help, you can always count on me." The offer caught Emily off guard. Monica's life was just as challenging, yet she was willing to give what little she had. It was a stark contrast to the cold response Emily had received from her sister. Beth, meanwhile, had not reached out once since their awkward phone call. Emily tried to give her the benefit of the doubt, but when she learned from a mutual acquaintance that Beth had recently booked a spa weekend, the hurt was hard to ignore. The fake financial crisis Emily had engineered was forcing the truth to rise to the surface, and it wasn't always easy to face. Jake's entitlement, Beth's indifference, and Monica's surprising generosity painted a complicated picture of the people in her life. One evening, as she folded laundry in the living room, Jake came in and slumped onto the couch. "Mom," he said begrudgingly, "I know I've been kind of a jerk lately. I guess it's just hard not having what everyone else has." Emily paused, her hands resting on a pile of towels. "Jake, it's not about what you have. It's about how you handle what you don't have." She didn't expect him to fully understand, but his reluctant apology was a step forward. Every night, Emily lay awake, staring at the ceiling and wondering if she was doing the right thing. The money in her bank account was enough to erase her struggles overnight, but what would it reveal about the people she loved? And when the truth came out, would they ever see her the same way again? Emily decided it was time to push her plan further. If her small lie about a financial crisis had revealed cracks in her relationships, a bigger test might uncover the truth she was seeking. Late one night, after tucking Lily into bed, Emily sat at the kitchen table with her phone, crafting the next stage of her test. The following morning, she called a family meeting. Jake arrived with his usual teenage reluctance, slumping into his chair, while Lily sat attentively, sensing the seriousness in her mother's tone. Emily folded her hands on the table, her voice steady but tinged with worry. "I have some news," she began. "Things have gotten worse at work. I may not be able to cover all of our expenses this month. We'll need to make some tough decisions." Jake groaned, throwing up his hands. "Great. So now what? Are we going to lose the apartment too?" His tone dripped with frustration, but Emily noticed the faint flicker of fear in his eyes. Lily, ever the optimist, chimed in, "We'll figure it out, Mom. Maybe I can sell some of my paintings at the school fair." Emily's heart ached at her daughter's selflessness. Emily also decided to test her sister Beth further. She called her under the pretense of asking for help. "Beth, I hate to bother you, but I really need a loan," she said, her voice trembling to sell the illusion. Beth's response was quick and cutting. "Emily, I told you before. I don't have the money to bail you out every time something goes wrong, but you've never bailed me out," Emily replied, trying to keep her voice calm. "This is the first time I've ever asked for help." Beth sighed dramatically. "I have my own problems, Em. You'll just have to figure it out." The line went dead. Shaking off the sting of Beth's rejection, Emily turned to her closest friend, Monica. At the diner later that day, Emily casually mentioned her crisis while they were on break. Monica didn't hesitate. "How much do you need?" she asked, her voice earnest. Emily blinked in surprise. "You don't even know the full story," she said. "I don't have to," Monica replied. "You've always had my back, and I'll always have yours. Just let me know how I can help." The stark differences in how people responded to her fabricated crisis were eye-opening. Jake's entitlement stung, but his occasional moments of guilt gave her hope. Lily's generosity and Monica's loyalty warmed her heart, while Beth's coldness deepened the rift between them. That evening, Emily sat in her room, staring at the lottery ticket tucked in its hiding place. Her test was working, but it was also tearing her apart. She wondered if she'd gone too far, if she was unfairly judging the people she loved. But deep down, she knew the answers to her questions were the key to ensuring her newfound wealth wouldn't destroy her family. With the hardest part of her plan yet to come, Emily resolved to see it through. She had no idea just how shocking the results would be. As Emily's fabricated financial crisis unfolded, the true colors of those closest to her began to shine through, some brightly, others darkly. It was a sobering realization that not everyone she loved could be trusted to weather a storm with her. Her teenage son, Jake, became a roller coaster of emotions. One day he was sulking, slamming doors, and complaining about how unfair life was. "I can't go to the tournament now because we're broke," he muttered, his frustration spilling over during dinner. But the next, he'd surprise her by quietly offering to help with chores, or by apologizing for his outbursts. "I know I've been a jerk, Mom," he admitted one evening, shuffling his feet awkwardly. I hate feeling like we're stuck." Lily, her youngest, continued to be a bright spot. She spent her free time painting cheerful pictures to sell at her school's art fair, proudly showing Emily her progress each night. "Maybe we'll make enough to get pizza one night," she said with a big grin. Emily couldn't help but smile, her heart swelling at her daughter's resilience. Beth, however, was a different story. After Emily's second plea for help, her sister became distant, barely responding to texts or calls. When they did speak, Beth's tone was clipped and dismissive. "I'm busy, Emily. I can't solve your problems for you," she said during one particularly tense call. Emily had always known Beth could be selfish, but the coldness in her voice stung more than she expected. The biggest blow came when Emily overheard Beth talking to a mutual acquaintance at a family barbecue. "Emily's always been dramatic," Beth said with a laugh. "She's probably exaggerating about her money problems to get attention. She always has to make everything about her." Emily stood frozen in place, the words like a slap to the face. Her best friend, Monica, continued to be a beacon of support. Monica checked in daily, offering to cover Emily's shifts or babysit Lily so Emily could rest. "You've done so much for everyone else," Monica said one night after work. "Let someone take care of you for once." The stark contrast between Beth's indifference and Monica's kindness left Emily torn. She wanted to believe her family could be trusted, but the evidence suggested otherwise. As the days went on, Emily realized the people she expected the most from often let her down, while those she overlooked surprised her with their loyalty. It was a painful lesson, but one she knew she needed to learn before revealing the truth. The biggest test was yet to come. Emily decided she would reveal her secret soon, but not before one final twist in her plan forced everyone to show their true selves. Emily's final test began innocently enough, an invitation to a family dinner. She wanted to gather everyone close, hoping to gauge their reactions to her supposed financial woes one last time. The idea was simple. Set up a scenario where their true intentions couldn't hide. Beth arrived first, wearing a new designer dress that made Emily wince at the irony. "You went shopping?" Emily asked, trying to keep her voice light. Beth shrugged, helping herself to a glass of wine. "A girl needs to treat herself now and then," she said with a smirk. "How's the situation?" The emphasis on situation felt like a jab, but Emily let it slide. Jake came home next, his usual grumbling replaced with a tense silence. He sat down at the table without a word, barely glancing at his aunt. Lily, as always, brought light to the room, eagerly showing off a new painting she'd done. "Look, Mom, it's us at the beach," she said proudly, handing Emily the picture. The evening began well enough, but things took a dark turn when Emily stepped away to grab dessert from the kitchen. She returned quietly, overhearing Beth talking to Jake in hushed tones. "She's struggling, Jake," Beth was saying. "If your mom can't handle things, someone's going to have to take over. You're old enough to help her, you know." Jake's response shocked Emily to her core. "Maybe I will," he said. "If she'd just let me handle things, we wouldn't be in this mess. She's too stubborn to admit she can't do it on her own." Emily's breath caught in her throat. She'd expected resentment or frustration, but the tone of entitlement in Jake's voice was a blow she hadn't seen coming. Her son, the boy she'd worked herself to the bone for, was ready to assume control not out of love, but out of a misplaced sense of superiority. Beth didn't help. "That's the spirit," she said with a laugh. "Maybe we should talk about how to guide her. She's clearly overwhelmed." Emily stepped into the room, her expression calm but her heart racing. "Guide me?" she asked, her voice slicing through the tension. Beth froze, her face turning red. Jake looked down at his plate, suddenly interested in the pattern of the ceramic. "We were just talking," Beth stammered. "I'm sure you were," Emily replied, her tone steady. "And it's good to know where everyone stands." The rest of the evening passed in awkward silence, the air thick with unspoken tension. Emily replayed the conversation in her mind long after the dishes were cleared, struggling to process the betrayal. She had expected Beth to be selfish, perhaps even cruel, but hearing Jake align himself with her sister stung in a way she hadn't anticipated. Later that night, as the house fell silent, Emily sat alone in her bedroom. She opened the drawer where the lottery ticket was hidden and stared at it for a long time. The weight of her secret felt heavier than ever. The test had worked, perhaps too well. Now she had to decide what to do next. Would she expose the truth to everyone, or keep her wealth hidden forever to protect herself from further disappointment? One thing was certain. Her family and friends would never look at her the same again. The following evening, Emily gathered her family in the living room. Jake slouched on the couch, still avoiding eye contact, while Lily sat cross-legged on the floor, clutching her sketchbook. Beth arrived last, her confident demeanor masking the unease Emily could see flicker across her face. Monica had also been invited, seated quietly by the window, watching the family dynamics unfold with her characteristic calm. "I have something to tell you all," Emily began, her voice steady but her heart pounding. The weight of what she was about to reveal felt monumental. "I haven't been honest with you, and I think it's time I set the record straight." Beth's eyebrow arched in suspicion, while Jake glanced at her for the first time in days, a flicker of curiosity in his eyes. Lily, ever the optimist, simply said, "What is it, Mom?" Emily took a deep breath. "I lied about the financial crisis. We're not struggling." In fact, she reached into her pocket and pulled out the lottery ticket, holding it up for everyone to see. "I won the lottery. $35 million. The room went silent. Beth's jaw dropped, Jake sat up straighter, and Lily gasped, her eyes wide. Monica was the only one who smiled, quietly murmuring, "I knew something was up." Beth recovered first, her tone sharp. "You're joking, right? 35 million? And you didn't tell us?" "I didn't tell anyone," Emily replied, her voice firm. "I needed to see who I could trust. I wanted to know how the people in my life would treat me when they thought I had nothing." Jake leaned forward, his face a mix of anger and confusion. You let us think we were broke? That I couldn't go to my tournament? That we might lose everything? Emily nodded, holding his gaze. I did. And do you know what I learned, Jake? I learned who was willing to stand by me, even when things seemed impossible. And who wasn't. Beth bristled, crossing her arms. So what? You were testing us? That's not fair, Emily. We're family. Emily's tone remained calm, though her words were sharp. Family doesn't belittle you behind your back. Beth, I heard what you said to Jake about guiding me, and I heard what you said at the barbecue about me being dramatic. Beth flushed, her confidence faltering. I didn't mean. You meant every word, Emily interrupted. And it showed me exactly where I stand with you. Jake shifted uncomfortably. I was just trying to help, he mumbled. You weren't helping, Emily replied gently but firmly. You were blaming me, Jake. You assumed I couldn't handle things instead of supporting me. That hurt more than you realize. Lily spoke up, her small voice breaking the tension. Are we okay now, Mom? Do we get to keep the house? Emily's heart softened as she knelt to hug her daughter. Yes, sweetheart. We're okay. Better than okay. She turned to Monica, her voice warm. And Monica, thank you for being the kind of friend I can count on. You didn't hesitate to offer help, even when you thought I was struggling. That means more than you'll ever know. Monica smiled. That's what friends are for, Emily looked at the others, her expression serious. This money changes everything. But I've learned it doesn't change who people really are. I'll share what I have, but only with the people who've proven they care about me for me. Not just for what I can give them. The room fell silent, the weight of her words sinking in. Emily knew she'd opened a wound, but it was a necessary one. For the first time, she felt free to live her life on her terms, surrounded by the people who truly deserved to be part of it. The days following Emily's confession were filled with mixed emotions. Relief, tension, and moments of reflection. She had lifted the veil of her secret, but the fallout was far from over. Jake was the first to approach her. One evening, as Emily sat on the couch flipping through Lily's latest sketches, he came in and sat beside her, his usual bravado replaced by a rare vulnerability. Mom, he began hesitantly, I've been thinking about what you said, about how I acted. You're right. I didn't handle things the way I should have. Emily put the sketchbook aside and turned to him. I appreciate you saying that, Jake, she said gently. It wasn't just about the things you said. It was about how quickly you assumed the worst of me. You're my son, and I need to know you believe in me, even when things are hard. Jake nodded, guilt clouding his face. I do, Mom. I guess I didn't realize how much pressure you were under. I'm sorry. Emily hugged him, her heart lifting slightly. Thank you, Jake. That means a lot. Beth, on the other hand, was less forthcoming. When Emily called her to discuss the situation, Beth was defensive. I don't think I did anything wrong, she said bluntly. If anything, you were the one lying to us. Emily sighed, the exhaustion from years of their strained relationship weighing heavily. You're right, I lied. But I didn't do it to hurt anyone. I did it to protect myself. And what I learned is that I can't count on you the way I hoped I could. Beth scoffed, her tone icy. So that's it? You're cutting me off. Emily hesitated before replying. No, I'm not cutting you off. But things need to change, Beth. If you want to be in my life, it has to be about more than just convenience or competition. Beth didn't respond, and Emily knew it might take time or it might not happen at all. Either way, she felt a sense of closure. Meanwhile, Monica remained the steady presence Emily had come to depend on. One afternoon, as they sipped coffee at the diner, Emily reached across the table and squeezed Monica's hand. Thank you for being there for me, she said. You're not just my friend. You're family. Monica smiled, her eyes warm. You do the same for me, she replied simply. As for Lily, her unwavering kindness became a cornerstone of Emily's next steps. What do you think we should do with the money? Emily asked her one evening. Lily's answer was simple but profound. Let's help people, Mom. People like us who need it. Emily smiled, pulling her daughter into a hug. I think that's a wonderful idea. With the truth out in the open, Emily finally turned her attention to how she could use her newfound wealth. She had always dreamed of a life free from worry, but now, the idea of simply living lavishly didn't sit right with her. Lily's words echoed in her mind. Let's help people, Mom. The first priority was securing her family's future. Emily paid off the apartment's mortgage, ensuring they'd always have a place to call home. She set aside a college fund for Lily, giving her the freedom to pursue her love of art without the weight of financial stress. For Jake, she created a trust fund with a condition. He could only access it if he graduated from college. It's not about the money, Emily explained to him. It's about making sure you work for something and appreciate what you have. Jake, to her relief, agreed. Next, Emily turned her focus outward. Inspired by her own struggles, she donated a portion of her winnings to local shelters and food banks, ensuring other single parents and struggling families wouldn't have to face the same hardships she had. It's not about charity, she told Monica. It's about giving people a fighting chance. But Emily didn't stop there. With Monica's help, she opened a small community center in their neighborhood. The center offered free childcare, job training programs, and art classes, fulfilling Lily's dream of helping others. On the center's opening day, Emily stood at the ribbon-cutting ceremony, her heart swelling with pride as she saw families walking through the doors. None of this would have happened without you, Mom, Lily said, tugging at Emily's hand. You believed in us first. Emily smiled, tears welling in her eyes. And now we get to believe in others. Even Beth's role in Emily's life shifted, albeit gradually. After months of silence, Beth showed up at Emily's apartment one afternoon, a mix of guilt and humility in her expression. I heard about the community center, she said quietly. It's impressive. I just wanted to say I'm sorry. I let my pride get in the way of being there for you. Emily accepted the apology, but with a guarded heart. Thank you, Beth. Let's take it one step at a time. Emily also made sure to thank Monica for her unwavering loyalty. You could have used this money to buy a house, a fancy car, anything, Monica teased as they sat together at the diner one evening. I did, Emily replied with a smile. I bought us hope. And that's worth more than anything money could ever buy. By the end of the year, Emily's life looked vastly different from the one she had known. Her family was secure, her friendships were stronger, and her community was thriving. But most importantly, she had found peace. Not in the wealth itself, but in how she used it to create a legacy of love and kindness. A year after Emily's life-changing lottery win, she stood outside the community center she'd built, watching children laugh and play in the vibrant mural-filled courtyard. Families bustled in and out of the center, attending workshops, picking up groceries from the pantry, or dropping off little ones for free childcare. The once gray, struggling neighborhood now radiated hope, much like Emily's own journey. She reflected on how far she'd come, from juggling bills and double shifts at the diner to creating something that changed lives, including her own. The money had given her freedom, but it was her decisions that had brought true fulfillment. For Emily, the greatest reward wasn't the wealth itself, but the opportunity to give back and inspire her children to do the same. Her family had grown stronger, too. Jake had stepped up, focusing on school and showing newfound maturity. One evening, he had thanked her out of the blue. I get it now, Mom, he'd said. You weren't testing us to hurt us. You were trying to protect us. I'll make you proud. Lily, her constant ray of light, had started her own small art classes for kids at the center, showing Emily's kindness coming full circle. Even Beth had begun rebuilding her relationship with Emily, offering to help with events at the center, though trust was still being earned. Emily's best friend, Monica, remained her greatest support. You're like a superhero now, Monica teased during one of their coffee chats. No cape, Emily replied with a smile, just a mom doing her best. One crisp autumn evening, Emily found herself alone on the porch of her now fully paid-off home. She reached into her pocket and pulled out the folded lottery ticket she'd saved. The small piece of paper that had once represented everything she thought she needed now felt like a relic of a different life. Emily gazed at the clear, starry sky, the same question lingering in her mind that had started it all. What does it mean to be rich? For her, the answer was simple. Richness wasn't measured by the size of a bank account but by the depth of love, loyalty, and the ability to make a difference. She folded the ticket carefully and tucked it away in her keepsake box, a quiet reminder of the journey that had changed her life. As the porch light flickered on, Emily smiled to herself, content in the knowledge that she hadn't just found wealth. She had created a legacy. What about you? If you were in Emily's shoes, would you have tested your family's loyalty? Or would you have shared the news right away? And how would you have used the money? Let us know in the comments. And don't forget to rate this story from 1 to 10. If this story inspired you, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more heartwarming and dramatic tales. I'll see you in the next one.